You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, we are Enterprise-Splaining, the podcast where we explain Star Trek Enterprise to each other and to you. I'm Jamie, and these are my co-hosts Maria.
Hello.
And Bill.
Bonjour.
Today we are going to be talking about the Star Trek Enterprise episode Fusion. However, I'm the only person here who's actually watched it, so it's my job to explain to my co-hosts what happened on the episode. But before we get to that, let's first talk a bit about last week's episode.
Shuttle Pod 1. Oh, I am so anxious to hear your reactions to this. Gimme.
Last week, Bill did tell us about Shuttle Pod 1, so Maria and I finally watched it. Maria, any thoughts?
I have several notes.
How erotic did you find this episode?
Well, do you want to go, switch off? Like, you do a note, I do a note?
Sure.
All right, Maria, what was your first note?
My first note is who's in charge of engineering, which is something that I believe Archer said, and feel like you should fucking know that, captain of the ship. Who's in charge of engineering now that Trip's on an away mission? Well, seems like something you should know, is all I'm saying.
Well, again, they haven't invented chain of command yet.
Right.
They have not.
That was the lie of the episode, as you'll recall.
Who did rock, paper, scissors to get control of engineering?
So my first note was at the very beginning in that opening scene when Trip was shit-talking Europe. He mentioned that the warp engine wasn't invented by Serbo-Croatians. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that was a really interesting little, almost like an Easter egg. Because especially if you think about the 90s was like a lot of wars in that region. And I felt like it was a little fun because I feel like that one little comment implies that there's peace between Serbia and Croatia in the future to the point where they're basically like one peoples.
Yeah, I agree.
It was just like a really subtle little thing that went by really quickly that I thought was really a nice touch.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you really don't want to think about with Star Trek, especially Next Gen, is that Picard is really proud of his French heritage. They're like 300 years in the future. Not only does France still exist, but they have the same flag.
Maria, what was your next note?
My next note is the bourbon on the shuttle pod is bullshit. So what he said was that Archer had put a bottle of bourbon on the shuttle pod
that he was saving for a special occasion.
Why would he leave it on the shuttle pod? You can make up another excuse for why there's bourbon on the shuttle pod, man. Well, it's fine.
Clearly, Archer is an alcoholic, and he's hiding alcohol throughout the ship.
My note was that Archer's going to be so pissed that they drank all his bourbon.
I had that thought too. I was like,
Amazing.
Well, they were dying. My next note is Malcolm is so overly dramatic.
Malcolm is a messy bitch who lives for drama.
He immediately was like, well, we're dead now, which I get. Like, I understand why, but oh my God, he was so overly dramatic about everything. And then he recorded like 20 letters home. It was ridiculous.
Okay, but think about it this way. If Trip had actually listened to Malcolm and they just fully gave up from the beginning and they both spent all their time writing notes, the whole episode would have been a lot shorter because they would have just done that until the Enterprise showed up and they would have been totally fine.
I'm not sure that's true, though. I think the whole reason that they had the Enterprise have to go out to that planet was that they were going to be so delayed. And so it was going to take them longer than they had air. I think.
But they would have been fine. They could have spent weeks. The only reason they ended up not having a lot of time was because they tried to go somewhere and then ran into some of those little black hole things that messed up their ship.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, that's
if
fair.
They had just, on the other hand, maybe they would have gotten hit by one of those anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I do feel like they would have had a better chance if they just stayed there and just given up and lied on the floor, feeling sorry for themselves until the Enterprise came back.
What a fucking show that would have been.
And yet still something I can imagine this show doing.
My next note was just, Archer is so rude to T'Pol.
That micro black holes thing Jesus Christ, like, oh, because, the Vulcans are so well known for making shit up without any evidence. That is definitely a thing that Vulcans do.
It's all anybody can talk about. You know how those Vulcans are, unemotional and always talking about microscopic black holes.
Full of conspiracy theories about shit they don't, that doesn't, what? So rude. I'm with you. My next note is Malcolm a real Vulcan word, or was that just something he dreamt?
100%
he dreamt that. There's no way
I know he dreamt it, but is there actually, I should have looked this up, but is there actually a Vulcan word?
Are you suggesting, Maria, that there are Vulcans who go on their Cabo San Lucas vacations and get tattoos of Malcolm on their arm?
My next note was, why don't the shuttle pods have fun names? On other Star Trek shows, don't all the shuttle pods have names?
They do. Galileo.
Is it on DS9 that they're all rivers? And then I can't remember what Next Generation was.
No, that's on original series, Galileo 7. Nobody's invented names yet.
Nobody's
haven't invented
name
naming shuttle
shuttlecraft yet.
pods.
My next is the first of many, which I will cover all in one. The first one was, does Trip have frosted tips? And that was the first of several notes I made about what the fuck is up with hair and makeup in this episode.
No, T'Pol's hair and makeup looked off.
Completely off to me. Her hair was all flat and weird. Her bangs were weird. Malcolm and Trip, their lips in certain scenes were incredibly pink, like weirdly brightly pink.
Was this after they turned down the temperature? Do you think it was supposed to be that they were... Oh, okay.
No, I had that same thought. Well, fun fact that I did discover because I started talking about it, and then Steven was like, there was a close-up of T'Pol and you could see kind of flyaway hairs, and he was like, look at her hair, that's really weird. Then he was like, well, maybe this is one of the shows that for some reason was digitally remastered in HD. Oh. And then we realized Enterprise is in 16:9, which is very unusual. So we looked it up, and fun fact, Enterprise was one of the first shows to be filmed in 16:9 screen size.
For HGTV. Oh, interesting.
So that kind of makes sense, but I thought that was kind of neat.
Oh, that is really cool. So my next note, it's that they have Enterprise windbreakers.
They do.
Oh my God, there's all there. It was super cute.
I liked the windbreakers. They were cool. And like, it's kind of funny that they have the exact same design that's of their normal uniform, but printed onto the windbreakers.
No, we saw that. We saw that in the pilot when they went down to the Hobo planet. That was the Star Trek casual.
I don't remember that.
I feel like the colors were a little different though. Yes, I agree. They were very cute.
They looked so cold, like genuinely cold, to the point where I was like, did they go film this up in the snow in the Sierra Nevadas and like torture these two actors? Because you could see their breath and stuff, which is not like, that wasn't an effect. Yeah. That was clearly real. Like, I think they like genuinely just made them super cold. Like they stuck them in on a snowy mountain.
If I recall from my research, they actually refrigerated the set.
Oh,
cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
It looked absolutely miserable just to be filming it.
Right.
Trying to like act and be actually that cold would be absolutely miserable.
And it makes sense that they refrigerated the set so that they could get the breath and things like that.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
That was my last note.
One of my notes just says, cordially Malcolm, because for fuck's sake. Who ends your sorry I'm dead note with cordially Malcolm?
Was that the one to like the ex-girlfriend?
Yeah, to the ex-girlfriend.
Well, you can't say love.
Right.
She might get some ideas.
Your obedient servant.
But he's dead. And then Trip's train problem, the train leap. I'm like, you are the engineer. I feel like maybe that shouldn't be a problem for you to do that math. But... And then going back to the butts, my note is that drunken scene actually ended up being a little cute. They were clearly drunk. It was cute.
The acting was not good, though. Like
the acting was not good.
It was not good drunk acting.
Bad.
No.
Yes, but I understood what they were trying to accomplish. I think this episode was entirely about trying to get Malcolm's personality to show in some way. And what it did that, but it made me dislike him even more.
Like, I already just found Malcolm boring, and after this episode, I cannot stand him.
Yeah, I dislike him intensely now.
Like, I had to watch this next episode, and, like, every time Malcolm's on the screen, I'm like, not Malcolm.
Oh, I feel like I need more Travis. Travis seems nice.
So I do have a follow-up question, Maria. You watched this with your husband, Steven. At what point did he peg that the dream sequence was a dream sequence?
Immediately.
Yes!
He pegged it immediately.
Yes!
He was like, oh, this is not real.
My husband definitely, like, it took him a little longer, but that's because up till that point, he thought there was some sort of weird multiverse thing going on.
Sure.
Because it just like, he's like, well, the Enterprise was destroyed. And then, so he's like, oh, there's like multiverses or something. But before the end of the scene, he definitely figured out it was a dream. But like, he knew it wasn't like our normal T'Pol. Mm-hmm. That obviously from the beginning was clearly not right. But he just had a different explanation that wasn't dream. I've heard previous to us watching this, I heard that this was one of, if not the best Enterprise episode. So,
oh my God, are you serious?
All downhill from here.
I will say,
oh my God.
I will say again, I enjoyed watching this episode just for the character work between these two actors. Like, I will not say,
I actually genuinely enjoyed this episode quite a bit. I think this might have been the best episode we've seen so far.
I didn't love it.
Okay.
I mean,
I
it was fine.
It's a great episode of Star Trek, but I enjoyed watching this episode for the work between these two actors.
Yes, I agree. It was fun. It was a little confusing too. It's weird that they never ever show the aliens. I had to stop and explain what was going on to Steven because he was like, what is happening? What is with this boron thing? I missed that. Because it's literally a throwaway line at the very beginning. Like, you don't.
Yeah, and the structure of it is really
get
confusing.
Into it.
That's why, like, Eric spent half the episode thinking there was a multiverse. Like, because it was such a weird structure.
Yeah.
Well, and you can't have this. Characters don't know what's happening. They think that one thing is going on and then add a dream sequence in there. There's enough shit to be confusing as is, you know?
They should have just had us not see the Enterprise at all until the very end. Or they needed to, like, explain that right at the beginning. One or the other, but it was weird to have it be, like, kind of slowly doled out. It was just... I didn't feel like the mystery itself wasn't that interesting. It was just confusing.
I think this goes back to what Bill always says. Not having a captain's log at the beginning, that would have solved this. Having the captain explain this to us, and they sort of came close to doing that.
That was the craziest thing, was that Malcolm's bullshit letters, that would be actual narration, and then you have fucking Crow T robot come in and completely undercut them.
Yeah, I agree. Great work between the actors. I agree. I just didn't like the structure of the episode very much.
No.
And like I said, I think that they were trying to make us learn more about Malcolm, but I don't think they were expecting us to dislike him as much as I disliked him in this.
After I watched that episode, I know that we talked a lot last week about how up till now I was getting a lot of gay vibes from Malcolm. And there was a part of me that was like, is this all in my head? Like, I don't, where am I even getting this from? Like, is it just me? So I may have Googled Malcolm Reed gay to see what came up. And it turns out, apparently, back when the show first premiered, there were rumors that they were going to have their first gay character, and it was going to be Malcolm. Apparently, there's a lot of people who think that the dream sequence with T'Pol was specifically to be like, he's not gay. Like, they wanted to make sure everybody knew that he wasn't actually gay. Because even once the show came on, people were like, this Malcolm guy seems gay. Like, so I know we joked about this, but actually it seems like the writers were actually literally afraid people might think maybe Malcolm's gay. And this was the episode to be like,
See?
guys, Malcolm is so straight. He loves the ladies.
So many women.
What you have put into my head right now is that every time Malcolm is writing one of his letters to his girlfriends is that he's looking side-eyed. And now my letter to Melissa, who's from the northwest portion of Canada. Dear Melissa.
Well, I actually was thinking that, like, I would like his character so much more if he was gay, and everything he did in this episode was to try to convince Trip he wasn't. Do you like her bum? Like, that's such an awkward, weird thing to say. It would make perfect sense. Like, this is something a straight person would say.
And he has to come up with a word. He doesn't know how to say, like, an erotic male word for butt. He has to, if you like her, I think she has a great, bum.
Well, bum is a British thing. That choice was because he's British more than because he's. But yes,
I don't want my utopian future to have gay people feeling like they need to be in the closet.
Oh, obviously not.
But
no.
oh sure,
the way they had to keep being like, guys, he's straight. Look at him talk about ladies. It was so over the top that it really felt like somebody who's in the closet trying to like prove that they're straight. But I think that that's why they had to put the dream sequence in.
The fact that these two men who are freezing to death had separate blankets offended me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I
was
agree.
like, you are trying to stay alive. You should be, one of you should be sitting in front of the other. You should have your arms and legs wrapped around each other with multiple blankets.
Well, if the purpose of the episode was to prove to all the people watching the show that Malcolm is gay, they definitely couldn't have him cuddle with Trip.
Right. Fair enough.
This show.
Ugh.
All right. So, God, with that out of the way.
And that's
It
our
is
time.
time.
It's been 2 hours since we started this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Make sure to rate and review.
It is now time to talk about this week's episode. That is right. We are not here to talk about Shuttlebot 1. We are here to talk about a new episode. Computer, what episode will we be talking about this week?
Fusion. A group of atypical Vulcans visiting Enterprise subject T'Pol to uncomfortable new ideas.
Quick prediction. This episode is about Chef in the kitchen doing fusion cuisine. He's going to create French New Orleans sushi that everybody loves and enjoys, and then Phlox makes it weird.
All right. Well, we'll find
I'm in
out.
for that. That would be great.
All right. So it is time for my favorite segment of the podcast, Two Truths and a Lie. I am going to tell you 2 truths and 1 lie about the episode, and you can guess which one is a lie. Are you ready?
Yes.
Wait, the Diane Warren segment isn't your favorite segment of the podcast?
That's our favorite segment of the podcast.
That's fair.
Statement 1. T'Pol laughs so hard that she ends up in sickbay.
Okay.
Statement 2. A man upsets T'Pol so much that she ends up in sickbay.
I like where this is going.
Statement 3. T'Pol has a sex dream so intense that she ends up in sickbay.
Oh my god.
She will be in sickbay twice this episode.
Twice?
For 2 of these reasons.
So two
Well,
of those
no,
are
well,
true.
I mean, it could be that she laughs so hard she has a sex dream and that she ends up in sex. Okay, so what
Maybe that
okay.
it is true. 2 of these could be one.
Okay,
and
refresh.
she could be
Okay,
going
so
to sick
she
bay
has
one time.
she has a sex dream. She laughs. What's the third thing?
A man upsets her.
I think the man upsets her one is the lie. Even though that makes her laughing a lot, which is very weird.
Fusion. Okay, I'll say that she laughs so much she ends up in sick bay. I'm just pulling this out of the air. Okay, that's my pick.
You think
she
that's
laughs
the
so
lie?
much?
Let's get into the episode. We open on Archer showing T'Pol an astronomy textbook called Cosmos A to Z. He tells her it was a birthday gift from his father for his 8th birthday, and he used to, quote, stare at the cover for hours. Yes.
Stare at the
he
cover?
would stare at the cover. He's not reading this book for hours, guys. He is staring at the cover.
Eventually,
for
my father explained what
hours.
a book was.
And I opened it.
Does he open it and there's like little pop-up illustrations?
We don't actually get to see the inside of this book. We only get to see the cover. And on the cover is a photo of the Arachnid Nebula. And Archer is very excited because in a couple hours, they are going to see it in person. And actually, I guess we do get to see the inside because T'Pol opens up the cover and looks on like the front page on the inside the cover. And there's a sticker there that says, "From the library of Admiral Johnny Archer."
Oh.
And Archer says he had high hopes when he was a kid.
Oh, that's very cute.
That's sweet.
Malcolm then calls Archer from the bridge and tells him that a ship is hailing them on a Vulcan frequency. So Archer and T'Pol, they go to the bridge and Hoshi patches them through to the other ship. It is a Vulcan named Tavin. He says he is the captain of the Vought class, and he says, "It's very good to meet you."
Weird.
Wait.
Weird.
Somebody is happy to meet them?
Yes.
A Vulcan is happy to meet them? Weird.
Archer thinks it's as weird as you guys do because he like gets this amused look on his face and like looks around in confusion at the other people on the bridge like, can you believe this guy? And the music swells and then theme song. So it's now time for the Diane Warren update of the week. I was perusing her social media and I'm like, oh, she hasn't like done anything new. So I started going back further and I discovered that I completely missed that weeks ago.
Diane Warren
She
killed
released
two
a new
people.
song.
She's been very quiet because you can't tweet from jail.
No, she wrote a whole new song before the other song that I even talked about, but she just has not really been promoting it. So she had like one post about it weeks back and never mentioned it again. The song is called One Heart, parentheses, Can Change the World. I love a parentheses song. And it's a song for the movie Ozzy, Voice of the Forest, which is an animated movie produced by Leonardo DiCaprio. It stars Amanda Steinfeld, but it also has in it playing crocodiles, RuPaul and Donald Sutherland, which is weird because Donald Sutherland is dead.
These are animated movies.
It's a great point. I forgot.
It's an animated movie.
Animated movies get recorded.
Well,
Yeah,
years
so
later.
I'm guessing that it
Yeah.
was recorded before he died, but I was still like, what? Like when I was looking it up, I was like, I am so confused by this. It is about a monkey influencer who saves a forest from deforestation.
It sounds terrible.
Sounds like something with, and I'm sorry, who does DJ Khaled play in this? Because this is absolutely something that he is part of.
And if you're like, when's this movie coming out? It came out months ago.
Well, yeah, that's
But only in the UK.
Ah.
I tried to figure out if it was ever going to be like released in the US, if it was going to be released on streaming, and there was nothing. It just seems like this movie is just gone, which is probably why Diane Warren's kind of given up on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
But she did write this song, One Heart, parentheses, Can Change the World. It is being sung by Tiwa Savage. And now I was not, do you guys know who that is?
No.
I was not
We
familiar
don't know
with
who
either.
her is. We had a whole
We
discussion.
don't know who anybody is.
You know who released the song? That guy. Who? No, that guy.
That guy.
So I've never heard of her either, but when I was looking at the music video for it, all of the there's like thousands of comments, and every comment is like, "Slay Queen, love you, mother." So I'm like, clearly she has some fans.
Yeah.
So I looked up a little bit about her.
Definitely not a Russian bot farm of AIs who are programmed
No,
to
she is.
comment.
She
Okay.
is not a bot.
Sure.
She's actually a Nigerian pop star, and she was discovered on X Factor in the UK. So I get the feeling that she's really big in West Africa. It seems like she's also big in the UK and probably in Europe too. I listened to some of her music on Spotify, and it is very good. It's like Afropop. So
nice.
it's got like Afro beats, but it's also like pop and a little bit of like hip hop. Very, very fun. I like really liked it. There was a New York Times profile of her that called her the Queen of Afrobeats.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
So, Jamie, what do you think of the song?
It's not that good.
Yeah.
Tiwa Savage is giving it all she can, but the problem is it is a very paint by numbers ballad. It's like it's called One Heart Can Change the
Yeah,
World.
as soon as you As soon as
It's
you
a
gave
ballad.
the name, I was like,
It's just a typical ballad. But then in the production, they put this Afrobeat under it, but changed nothing else, and it just sounds bad. It sounds very like they were like, we need to make it more like African, and they just hacked on this Afrobeat under it. It's not great, but I can say the music video is awesome because Tiwa Savage wears the best outfits in this music video. She wears 3 outfits. One of them looks like moss. Like, it looks like it has actual moss on it. One of them looks like fire, and it has these like red feathers that are supposed to be like fire. And then one looks like ice. It is, and it's like metal.
That sounds amazing.
It's so cool. She looks great. All the like Slay Mama comments. I was like, I get it now. I get why people love this woman. She
right.
seems great. The song's just not good enough for her, unfortunately. So back to the episode. So remember, we just had a Vulcan who is happy to see these humans.
Red flags, red alert, all crew to quarters.
Tavin says that they are a civilian ship and their purpose is exploration. And Archer is like, I thought that Vulcans don't like exploring.
man, take the fucking win for once in your life.
And Tavin is like, well, we are not typical Vulcans.
Oh, no.
Tavin says that there's some stuff on their ship that needs repair and asks for assistance. And Archer's like, yeah, cool. I love assisting other. Like, Archer loves nothing more than another ship that needs assistance.
This is 100% what happened with Zerillians. Who's getting pregnant in this episode?
Well, the ability for them to help a Vulcan in a technical situation he's got to be on cloud 9, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's huge. By the way, I think I figured out what's going on.
Oh, you want to say? You're probably right.
Just based on the 2 truths and a lie and what you've said so far, I'm assuming that the Vulcans are infected with something that disrupts their emotions, and then they're going to infect T'Pol, which is what's going to make her laugh or what's going to make her cry or whatever.
That's a good call.
Let's see if I was
that.
right.
Maybe. All right. Well, I guess we'll find out if that's what happens. Archer and T'Pol then have dinner with Tavin and another member of his crew whose name is Tolaris. Yes, if you thought that there were already too many people with T names on the Enterprise, guess what? We are now adding Tavin and Tolaris this episode.
Fucking why?
Because that is apparently the only letter that exists.
I feel like someone needs to create a Filk song about all the T names on Star Trek Enterprise.
So Tavin and Archer immediately bond over how Vulcan Command is always looking over their shoulders and they're like so annoying. They're like getting all bro-y. You can tell like Archer like really likes this guy.
Oh my God, Bill, you remember last episode where they were worried she was being replaced and you were like, wouldn't it be great if the Vulcan who replaces him is like a super bro-y Vulcan guy?
Wearing beach jams and has like mirror shades on top of his head.
Sounds like that's what we just got.
Oh my God. These are like, you'll see, these are Vulcan bros. They really are. Right. You are right.
Fantastic.
So the Vulcans are eating Vulcan dishes, but Archer has chicken marsala, one of my personal favorite dishes. Tavin looks over at Archer's food and is like, hey, could I try some of that? That looks good.
Gasp.
What?
And that's basically Archer. Like, Archer's like, yeah, but like, it's meat, right?
Oh, right. They don't eat meat too. Even worse.
But it's reconstituted.
Okay.
It's not actually a living creature.
Thank you. So I was annoyed because they've mentioned a bunch of times that the meat on the ship is made using protein sequencers. Mm-hmm. So this is not real meat.
Yeah. Right. It's not. Yeah, we talked about this. It's not like they have chicken somewhere on the ship. Or
unless
even
somehow
maybe
they
freezers.
do, they've got like a chicken coop on the ship somewhere. That's where Archer gets all his eggs, or his scrambled eggs.
Heartbreakingly for us, there is not a level where there are cow herds. Like,
I would love it.
No, this is reconstituted.
So
It's just been sequenced into this.
Yeah, they've done that before with T'Pol too.
Yeah. And she talks about that she finds the smell weird. So maybe that's a thing.
People don't eat meat for a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah.
There's like the ethical reasons, but then there's also people who are just like, just find the idea of it really gross.
Right.
And I definitely feel like if that's the case, even if it wasn't real meat, if it is molecularly exactly like meat, I still would put it this way. If somebody used like a protein sequencer to create something that was exactly like human meat, that like literally on a molecular level was human meat, but it didn't come from a real human, I don't know if I would eat it. Well, actually, that sounds interesting. Maybe I would, but that's because I'm a weird person. I would definitely feel weird about it, though. I would probably eat it, but I definitely feel like you can
Welcome to Long Pig. How would you like this?
The example I was thinking of is if this isn't me because I have eaten insects, but a lot of people are freaked out by the idea of eating insects. If somebody, and I will say, if somebody said, this is roach, but it's reconstituted roach, there's no fucking way I would eat it. Don't care if it's not real.
To get back to where we were, so Tavin asked Archer if he could try some of the chicken marsala, and Archer says, are you sure it's meat? And Tavin says it looks delicious, so Archer gives him a piece and he tries it.
And he likes it, we think?
Later in the episode, he says that he likes it. So the Vulcans then tell Archer and T'Pol that they are Vitosh Kator. Do you guys remember what that means?
Absolutely.
Nope.
Because I assumed it was like an original series thing. It's Vulcans without logic. I assume that you guys would know more, but it's Vulcans that experiment with having emotions. And other Vulcans consider them dangerous.
Is that
like
from
Spock's
5?
brother.
Oh, that might be from 5.
Because I remembered this, I think, from Strange New Worlds. And I think there was also like a movie that mentioned it or something.
Might be.
Did you say Spock's brother?
Doesn't Spock have a brother that
He does. Yeah.
That was in jail for like feeling emotions or something.
I remember virtually nothing from Star Trek. So apparently, what's the term?
Okay, it's Vitosh Kator, which the translation is Vulcans without logic. Although these Vulcans say that's not true; that they still have logic.
It's Vulcan for we like to party.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, basically. But what they say is that they have found ways to balance their emotions and logic without the emotions taking over. And T'Pol says that that is absolutely not possible, but they insist it is. And that they have done it.
Okay, here's something I wanted to bring up. Because everything T'Pol says about the Klingons, I think is kind of a lie. Is it possible that T'Pol is just kind of full of shit, or she doesn't know what she's talking about? Because every time T'Pol says something about the Vulcans, it's like, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, she's just wigging it.
Oh my god, is that why T'Pol is on this ship? She's the Enterprise equivalent of a Vulcan. She's the second best Vulcan that has been sent on this ship.
The other Vulcans were just like trying to get rid of her.
She told you that about the Klingons? That's not true.
I don't know if that's true. Okay. She's like, yeah, and also they say they Klingons. She just makes shit up. It's great.
The Klingons will give you gold and grant you a wish. Wait, what?
It's like me in every job I had in my 20s.
So the other Vulcan, whose name again is Tolaris, asks T'Pol what it's like being on a human ship, and T'Pol says that she's just there as an observer.
She is definitely not just an observer.
I'm sorry, isn't she like kind of second in command, sort of?
Well, she definitely took command of the ship when Archer was knocked out, so yeah.
And she claims to be second in command several times, or she has several times.
Yeah, just an observer. Give me I'm just like, this made me so confused. I genuinely like don't understand T'Pol's place on this ship. Right. I was also confused because I realized her title is sub-commander, which makes it sound like she's lower than Trip because Trip's commander. But then I'm like, well, that has to be like a Vulcan title.
It's a Vulcan title. It's a Vulcan title.
She's the commander of all the subs on the ship.
Also, is it possible that her official job from the perspective of the Vulcans is to observe, but she knows that unless she gets involved, she will die. Right. So she gets involved, but she doesn't tell the Vulcans that she isn't. She's like, no, I'm just observing.
I love that conspiracy theory.
I'm sorry we started a war with these three races. I was only an observer at the time.
So as this dinner is ending, the episode now splits. We have an A plot and a B plot. Yes, we have a B plot this episode. It's very exciting. when I was originally writing my script for this episode, it was really confusing because it makes sense, when you're watching an episode and it's like flipping between plots, it makes sense. But trying to write it down and be like, and now we're going back to this, and then we're going back to this. Right. It was actually really confusing. And I can tell you that these plots have nothing to do with each other and never interact or come together at all. They're not even like thematically similar. So
great.
I thought it would make more sense if I just gave you the B plot first, and then did the A plot. I'm going to start with B plot. The B plot is the lighter, more like fun plot that breaks up the A plot, which I'll do later, which is like the heavier plot that deals with like more serious issues.
The crew commits genocide.
That's the lighter one.
We've already seen that episode, Bill.
Again.
So, starting with B plot. Trip is in engineering talking to a third Vulcan, a Vulcan we haven't met yet, whose name does not start with a T. His name is Kov. Kov is surprised that there are so many women on the ship. And Trip says that nearly a third of the crew are women, in a way that implies that he is proud of this fact.
Proud of that. Yeah, great. A whole 30%, yo.
The writers of the show are like imagining this utopian future, and they're like, wow, in this utopian, almost a third of workers in a technical field are going to be women. Wow. Great job, guys.
I wonder if they wanted to say 50%, but they knew if they look at the actual cast, it's not 50% women. So they were like, we can't say it's 50-50 and then actually only show that.
But they're writing the show. They could have just not had this exchange.
That's
they
fair.
They could have just not mentioned it.
That's a great point. Fair point. Because that's not relevant
Nobody
in
was
some way.
forcing them to tell us how many women were on this ship. No one asked.
But bros gotta talk about the ladies.
And they're so proud. They're like, guys, can you believe it? Almost 1/3 women. We're doing so good in the future.
Well, we found out that estrogen interferes with the warp field. We're trying to correct for that, but,
So this is the first time that Kov has ever met a human. But guys, he has heard some things about humans. He just is like asking Trip throughout, and again, because this is B plot, where like we keep like going back to them, and he's like always asking Trip questions about things he's heard about humans. At one point he says that, quote, humans have a reputation.
Oh my God.
So some of the things that he has heard about humans, that human men mate year round with any woman they choose. And again, like, gay people apparently just don't exist.
I stand by my statement. These Vulcans are down to clown. They are ready to go.
For sure.
Yep.
I'm getting flashbacks to when I was in college. I went back to India for a while and met with a bunch of like people my age, and all the men pulled me aside and were like, is it true that American girls are easy? Like, that's what this is.
100%. Not 100% that's true, but 100% that was every other culture for me as an American male. Every other country, the girls are like, they're down for it, man. There are sexually available women available somewhere else.
Yes.
Well, Maria, you are going to love this because the rest of these really are like, all these are clearly making fun of American stereotypes.
Yeah.
So the other ones are that humans eat 6 meals a day. That humans spend half of the day in bed. And that humans have a game called football where they fight each other to the death.
Well, I mean, unless football's evolved quite significantly.
I mean, honestly, football's so dangerous that's not like,
that's
too far
fair.
from the truth.
Ooh,
Yeah,
commentary.
not quite to the death.
Unless you're talking about soccer, which is just about running around for a field for 90 minutes and then nothing happens.
But basically, we see like a bunch of scenes of Trip and Kov kind of bonding over this. Well, where Kov will be like, so do you get to mate with any woman you choose year round? And Travis will make some joke about it. Like, oh, you really haven't like seen me around the ship or something, like they're like joking and they're like bonding. It's like really, I like loved all these scenes. They're very cute.
Is
Wait,
this
is it
Trip or Travis? Thank you. Mind
I'm
meld.
so sorry. It's Trip. It's Trip.
Okay.
No, I don't even think Travis is like in this episode. I mean, I'm sure he has a line,
not.
but I don't remember him even being in this episode.
Or
We're
is-
getting like,
or-
no. If I say Travis, I definitely mean Trip. So meanwhile, Archer gets a call from Admiral Forrest, who is the same admiral that we've seen before.
Yep, that's good. Yeah.
He says that Kov is actually the son of a minister at the High Command, at the Vulcan High Command.
Oh God.
And that Kov has been estranged from his father, but his father is dying and wants to speak with his son one last time. And the admiral asks Archer to convince Kov to talk to his father. Archer then talks to Kov and is like, hey, your father's dying. He really wants to talk to you. And Kov is like, absolutely not. He says that the last time he spoke to his father told him that he was bringing shame to his whole family. So he's clearly
You can
like
imagine.
set these boundaries, and it's clearly like Kov is like hurt by this, but he's like, look, there's absolutely no way I'm going to talk to my father. And he tells Archer to send a message back to his father saying that they said goodbye a long time ago.
Wow.
That's some One Tree Hill shit.
Yeah.
So Archer then goes to Trip and is like, can you just like you're friends with Kov now, can you convince him to talk to his dad? So then Trip goes and tries to convince Kov, and Kov is like, again, not interested. This is really difficult for me. I understand that my father's dying, but like he was a bad person and he was terrible to me, and I don't want to talk to him. And then Trip is like, you know, this one time when I was in elementary school, we had this school dance and there was this girl I liked named Melissa, and I had a crush on her, and I like practiced the two-step because I wanted to dance with her. But then when the dance came, I was too chicken and I didn't ask her, and I have regretted it ever since. And he tells Kov that regret is one of the strongest and saddest emotions. And he's really worried that Kov is going to regret not talking to his father before he dies.
And Kov says, all right, I'll talk to my dying dad if you stop telling me this story.
At the end of the episode, after because this whole time Trip and Kov have been working together to I don't know, repair whatever's going on with their ship. Trip is walking Kov back to his ship for the last time. And Kov tells Trip that he took his advice and did talk to his father, where he learned that his father's condition has improved and he is actually not imminently dying after all. His father's fine. He's going to live a couple more years. It's totally cool. But he's really glad that he did talk to his father. Apparently they had a good conversation, and he thanks Trip for the advice. And then they're saying goodbye. And just as it seems like Trip is leaning in to give him a hug, and then at the last second, he turns and pats him on the back. There is no hug. He just pats it. He pats his shoulder. It's so bro-y. And it just kind of sucks because especially this emotional thing where he's thank you. You know, I talked to my father and it was actually really healing. Thank you so much for it. And then they're just all right, bro. It's real
bro.
weird. You really think that they're going to hug. Yeah, I was definitely shipping them. You guys wait till you see it. They're so, I just loved this friendship.
Aw.
And that is the end of the B plot.
I was literally just struck dumb by the idea that there is another bigger plot to this episode, because everything we've seen with Star Trek Enterprise, that would be the entire place. Wow, that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they got through with it.
So that was the B plot. It is now time for the A plot. And I need to remind you that B plot with the dying father was the lighthearted plot that broke up the heavier plot that we are about to go into. So
Can't wait.
Whew. This show, man.
I'm just amazed they have a plot on this show, but let's continue.
as a reminder, at this point, we are actually right after that dinner with the Vulcans, where we learned that these Vulcans are experimenting with feeling their emotions.
Okay.
T'Pol is catching up with Archer in his quarters, and Archer says that he thinks T'Pol has been avoiding the other Vulcans, and that he thinks they may be onto something. T'Pol does
Of course
not
he
agree.
does. Of course she doesn't.
Because Archer is completely emotionally available and in touch with his feelings. Yeah, okay.
Of course. And she explains to him that there's a really long history of Vulcans trying to do this, but that whenever Vulcans try to feel their emotions, it gets out of balance and they become too in their emotions, and it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
They
That's
lose all
interesting.
logic, which is
It's
why they work so hard to repress their emotions.
Yep, that's come up before.
It's like they have a drug problem.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
I mean, that
it's
sounds like kind of
once
what she's talking
like
about.
Once you have an addiction, you can't even try like a little bit because you just like go right back. Yeah, that's kind of like what she's saying. And Archer is like, I don't know, these Vulcans seem like they're fine. Like they seem like they balanced it fine. And T'Pol is like, no, Vulcans have been trying to do this for thousands of years or whatever. And they have never been able to find a balance. That's why we work so hard at repressing our emotions. We would love to feel emotions, but we can't. It's too dangerous.
They're Norwegians.
And Archer acts like T'Pol is just being silly. She just, those Vulcans, they just believe weird things with no evidence. And these guys seem
fucking
fine.
micro-singularities
They
all
liked
over
the
again.
chicken marsala, Maria.
Oh my fucking god.
So they're fine, obviously. He tells her that they don't seem dangerous to him. And he tells her that he strongly encourages her to spend more time with them.
Oh, that is some famous last words shit right there.
Feelings. Nothing
Later
more
on,
than-
T'Pol is in the mess hall by herself, and the mess hall's empty. It seems like it's like the middle of the night, so no one's in the mess hall. It's just her, and she's just getting herself a tea. And as she's doing this, Tolaris walks in.
Oh.
And the best word that I have to describe this man is smarmy. He is so smarmy.
Whoa.
Wait, Tolaris is a smarmy
A
Vulcan.
smarmy male on Enterprise?
But Tolaris is the other guy, right? Not Trips Bro. The other guy.
Trips Bro is
the captain.
Kav. No, the captain is Tavin.
Oh no,
This is Tolaris, the third Vulcan. So far we haven't heard much about it. He was at that dinner, but he didn't play a big part.
Got it.
He comes in, and keep in mind they are the only two people there. He starts making small talk to her, but he does this, and you'll see, it's hard for me to explain, but you'll know it when you see it.
We'll see it.
He stares at her super intently while he talks to her, and
I know this.
he asks her.
We've all met guys like this.
Oh yeah. He asks her to show him how to operate the drink dispenser. And I need you to understand that the way you operate the drink dispenser is you put your cup in and you tell it what you want and it gives you the drink. But no, and again, this is like Smarmy Guy 101. He's like, can you help me operate the drink dispenser?
Ew.
And she's like, okay. So she puts the cup in and she just says tea, hot tea or whatever. And as she's doing this, he stands uncomfortably close to her. And
Great.
she is looking forward at the drink dispenser and he is looking at her.
This is Creepy Dude 101. Every woman listening to this knows this.
Oh
boy.
yeah. And when you see it, you're just like, this is not right. Something's wrong. This guy must be evil. But there's a part of me when I was watching this that was the problem is on Next Generation, they would always have these smarmy men be like this to Crusher or
Deanna.
and half of the time they would turn out to be evil and half the time they were just a love interest for
Riker.
the episode. And so I feel Star Trek does not understand that this is actually uncomfortable. So it's truly impossible to tell if they are trying to make him evil on purpose or they are trying to create a love interest.
Is there incidental music? Is there?
I don't remember.
Music is always
that's
my
true.
cue into how it's is this guy
I honestly
a
don't
pseudo
remember.
rapist or is this a ghost that is being erotic?
Is this a pseudo rapist or is this a ghost who is being erotic?
In terms of the vagaries
That's
of
your-
Next Gen.
That's your sexy scale right there on a scale of.
Oh God! Even I'm creeped out by that.
So he keeps making this small talk with her, and she keeps trying to leave. Like, she just came to get her drink and go. And every time she like turns around to leave, he'll pepper her with another tiny question. And all of his questions feel a little bit off. He asks her a lot about tea. He's like, why are you drinking the tea? Like, why human tea? Why not Vulcan tea and stuff? And then he goes, do you like the taste? Things like that it just... Yeah. The whole time, I'm like on edge. I'm like, get away from this man. Get away from this man, T'Pol.
Yeah, that man's putting something in your tea right now.
And she clearly feels uncomfortable, but then is doing the thing where, like, because he's not outwardly doing anything, it's like, I feel like I have to be polite back. Yeah. Because he hasn't actually said anything creepy. He's like doing the being polite, but in a manipulative way to get her to stay when she is clearly uncomfortable and trying to leave. But during all this small talk, we do learn a little bit about T'Pol. We learn that she worked for 2 years on the consulate on Earth before she came to the Enterprise. Oh, so she's actually been around humans quite a long time. And she's been on the Enterprise for 7 months. So that's how long they've been out in space.
So what we've learned is that the Vulcans are so bad that the human males on Enterprise are infinitely preferable to hang around.
Oof. Maybe T'Pol doesn't like men.
Is the entire crew of this ship male, so far as we know?
Less than a third, or sorry,
no, not the Enterprise, the Vulcan ship.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Everybody, of course they are. Bill, have we met any female aliens other than the one that
got impregnated?
That impregnated Trip?
We had the lady that impregnated Trip.
Well, there was the Vulcan female.
The one lady that Archer kissed, and then we had the. Oh, never mind. That was not an alien.
The Klingon lady who instantly declared that the Enterprise had attacked them.
But for the most part, almost every time we've seen aliens, they are all men.
All right. So what I'm saying is, on this Vulcan ship, are there any females?
We didn't. Okay. We only see those 3 Vulcans and they're men.
These are Vulcans men rights activists who have decided to deny the.
It's just a ship full of men.
So these are just Vulcans, male Vulcans who have decided to reject the standards of Vulcan society.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Honestly, they do seem a little like
not all male Vulcans.
Yeah, they definitely sound incelly.
Okay. So Talaris tells T'Pol that he thinks that she's been changed by spending so much time around humans because she can like makes a joke at one point. She's choosing to drink human tea instead of Vulcan tea. And he tells her that her emotions are actually easy to read compared with other Vulcans. T'Pol tells him that what he's doing, the like experimenting with feeling emotions, is incredibly dangerous. And he's like, I don't agree. We've been doing this for months. We've been experimenting. We've been very careful and it's been going really well. So like, you're wrong. And she's like, I guess, whatever. And then she turns to leave again and he stops her again and is like, would you like to have this thing called pizza with me? Trip told me about it. And she's like, maybe another time. She does the like, I'm not hungry, but you know, it's so nice of you to ask. Goodbye. And she finally leaves.
I'm sorry, did you say pizza?
Yes. Yeah, the Vulcan is eating pizza.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He invites her to eat pizza with him.
I legitimately thought you were saying some Vulcan term that I didn't understand.
Pizza!
I'm sorry. Okay.
Pizza! It's got an apostrophe in it.
So back on the bridge, they have now made it to the nebula. Archer is looking at it. He's so happy to see this nebula that was like on the cover of his book. He decides that they want to chart it, but T'Pol says it's going to like take a really long time, like 3 weeks or something like that. And then Tavin is like, you know, our ship has better sensors than your ship. So if you want, we can stick around. I mean, you guys are fixing our ship anyway, and you can use our sensors to map the nebula. And Archer's like, hell yeah, love this idea. But Archer's like, you know, we really need somebody from our ship needs to be with you guys working on your ship. So you know who would be perfect for that? T'Pol. T'Pol would be perfect. Let's send T'Pol over to the Vulcan ship to work with these Vulcans that clearly make her feel extremely uncomfortable.
But he doesn't know that, though, does he?
Yeah, because she has told him that she doesn't like being around them and that what they're doing is dangerous.
Oh, but he's probably trying to like prove a point to her that everything is fine with them.
That's exactly. Well, because he told
I hate
her
it.
he wanted her to spend more time with them. He thinks that she should like be more open-minded to their philosophy. He wants her to basically like start doing this like feeling emotions thing that they're doing.
Thanks, I hate it.
Because he thinks he knows better because he's human and he has emotions and it's fine. So clearly Vulcans could just feel emotions and he's going to like fix her or something.
Even though in previous episodes, Archer has been very protective of her around other Vulcan. Anyway, okay. Nice. I'm sorry. I'm
But
asking
these are
for,
cool Vulcans.
I'm
Yeah,
asking
these
for
are his cool bro Vulcans.
Fair enough.
These are bro
I'm
Vulcans.
asking for in-show continuity. Sorry, my bad. Let's continue.
Yeah, like he doesn't want her around those stick up the ass Vulcans because then she'll be a stick up the ass Vulcan. He wants her around the cool party bro Vulcan.
I think we found the title for this episode. Thanks, I hate it.
Thanks, I hate it.
So T'Pol goes over to the Vulcan ship and she's working with Tolaris. And I kind of just want to explain what actually, I guess I don't know if they're on the bridge. I think they are on the bridge. I mean, we've seen Vulcan ships before, but just to remind you, there's like a circular thing in the center and they kind of like move around the center circular console when they're working.
They have a bunch of bikini posters, but they're ironic, so it's okay. And
Got red cars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So as they're working to, I don't know, do whatever they're trying to do with this nebula, like map the nebula or something.
Nobody cares.
The episode does not care about that at all. It's just a reason for them to be together. They're having a conversation again about his status as a Vitash Couture and how exactly his experiments have been going and stuff. And he tells T'Pol that there's a lot more to life than just logic and reason. And he asks her if she has ever felt that way. And she does kind of say that there was one time when she felt that way, but she says it was very brief and she doesn't feel that way anymore. But this is like, she opened the door that little bit and now he just like keeps pushing her.
Right.
And as they're like having this conversation, because there's that center console, she is like, keeps trying to work. And then he does this thing where he tries to like get near her and like stand uncomfortably close to her. And as he comes closer, she kind of like moves back the way you do when there's like somebody gets a little too close and you just sort of naturally just take a step back. So they're going around this like she keeps sort of moving to the side and then he'll kind of keep moving to try to get closer. It's really uncomfortable and unnerving.
I have a potentially weird question, and I apologize for this in advance because well, let's see how this goes. I know what T'Pol's uniform looks like. It's hypersexualized. What are the men wearing?
Tolaris is just wearing like a blue sweater, basically.
Okay. Fair enough. Asked and answered. Thank you.
So at the end of this conversation, she's like, we're done for the day. I'm going back to the Enterprise. And a lot of it, it's clear that she's like very uncomfortable by this conversation and is trying to get out of it. And he stops her before she leaves and tells her not to do her meditation that night. Vulcans apparently do a nightly meditation, which is what they do in order to keep their emotions in check. Yep. And he tells her not to do it that night, to just like try it, just experiment, like try just one night not doing it. And he tells her that it will lead to her to have more interesting dreams.
Ugh, I don't like it.
I don't like this episode. Let's continue.
She's not staying on the ship, on their ship, is she? Oh, thank God.
So we are now back into Paul's quarters. It's a little bit weird. She like has a candle and she blows out the candle and suddenly the screen goes black as the candle gets blown out. And then the light sort of comes back and we see like a blurry, indistinct image of T'Pol walking down like a weirdly smoky street. It's like an indistinct image. It's very dreamlike. This is clearly a dream. I think it's clear from the very beginning. They're not trying to hide that it's the other episode, the dream.
Yeah, they were trying to hide it.
They were trying to hide it. This one, they're not trying to trick you. It's pretty clear that this is a dream. She's wearing this extremely tight leather jacket and she has a wrap around her head.
You said extremely tight?
This jacket is so tight. It looks like they like sewed it. Like my husband was like, how did they get that on her? You will not believe how tight this leather jacket is. And then we hear like a voiceover where we hear Tolaris repeating a lot of the phrases or a lot of the things from earlier, but like out of context. He's like saying like, you can balance your like emotion and logic and like things like that. And we also start to hear some jazz music coming in.
Oh God, no!
Jazz? Oh no.
Not jazz. It's Riker.
Oh no. Well, I guess we know where Riker is in this episode. There's a callback. We haven't talked about that in a while.
So it suddenly cuts to T'Pol's room, and she's sitting on her bed, and Talaris is behind her, like up against her back. And then he leans down into her ear and he whispers seductively, "Do you like the taste?" Which is the thing that he said earlier about the tea. So basically, like, this whole thing is you hear Talaris saying these things from earlier, but in this manner that is like weirdly seductive. And we keep cutting between things. Like, there's one scene where like she's back at like the console thing on the other ship. We're cutting between the street scene and like scenes on the Enterprise. So in the street scene parts, we see T'Pol enter a club called Fusion, which seems to be a jazz club. And then later we see her like in this club sitting at a table, presumably like listening to a jazz band. But then in the ship scenes, she's like on the bed again, and then she's naked in bed with Talaris. And in the final parts that we see, like they are like full on fucking.
Oh no.
Oh, wow.
Ugh.
They are not being coy about it. We see these characters fucking.
And Deanna walks in and says, "Will, I need you to do the dishes before our child comes home from school."
Not now, Deanna.
Frantically closing down windows.
No, actually, this reminds me of the Next Generation scene where Deanna basically gets psychically raped.
Yep.
This is what it sounds like to me.
Okay.
Anyway, continue.
T'Pol wakes up and is clearly distressed, and then she goes straight to medical bay. And Flock seems really worried about her because like her numbers, like when he's like doing the thing, whatever he sees on his like scans are like all over the place. There's something clearly wrong. And T'Pol is like, "Oh, no. It's fine." She's like, "I know what caused this. It's because I did not do my nightly meditation last night. And so it's just causing me a little bit of like stress." But she's like, "All I need is an injection of this one thing and that will like make it go away." So apparently if Vulcans start to feel too much emotions, there's like some drug they can take.
It's like calms you down or whatever.
I'm sorry. It was just established in some episodes of original series that before the Vulcans established, like they were extremely violent. Like it was not just that they were emotional.
That's why it's so dangerous.
It was they were
right,
like,
and that's the problem.
They almost wiped themselves out on their planet before launching.
And that's why she tells them like they're saying
This is really dangerous.
No, like we've been very careful and we've been doing it very slowly, and we found a way. And they constantly do say that it actually takes a lot of work to balance. They're letting themselves feel a little bit of emotion, but not going overboard. And that's actually very difficult. It's actually harder than just repressing all your emotions, but that it seems like it's bringing something to their lives that is valuable to them, that it's worth all that work.
I don't like where this episode is going, but let's continue.
Back on the Vulcan ship, Talaris and T'Pol are again around that weird round console doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. Talaris immediately starts asking T'Pol what her dreams were like without the meditation, which is weird because she never even tells him that she didn't do the meditation. So again, like everything this guy does feels a little bit off and a little bit like too comfortable.
The devil, you say.
T'Pol is like, "Yeah, I had some dreams. It was uncomfortable. I didn't like it, but it's going to be fine because I'm going to just restart my meditations tonight." And the second she says she's going to start do a meditation that night, he starts to get really aggressive and like upset.
Well, also because she said I didn't like the dream.
What are you talking about? You're not going to do your no, like you started this experiment. He just gets like really upset that she's basically seemingly done with her experiments. And he keeps trying to convince her not to meditate again that night. And he's like, "I know it is really hard the first time. You'll get used to it. And then your dreams won't upset you so much. You just need to do it more and it'll be fine." And again, he keeps trying to come near her and she keeps moving around the console to try to like keep the console between him and her, but he's like aggressively coming towards her.
So it's so hard because she's like
this is not the relationship we have. Like, we're supposed to be professional. This goes far beyond, like, coworker small talk. Like, what the hell, man?
Okay.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the tension of this episode, just in terms of the tension of this storyline that you've established, would you say that this is staged effectively in terms of how T'Pol is, like, in terms of how they're establishing
like,
this
it
relationship?
feels wrong. It feels
this
creepy.
Is great.
It's clear, like, the writers know this man is creepy.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay, great.
I was going to say, like, when you were talking about the scene in, I was going to say 10 Forward, but whatever, in the galley or in the
in the
cafeteria, in the mess hall, I feel like that scene is like, sounds like such a good example of what it's like to be a woman who is dealing with that. Like, that sounds very real to me. It sounds very relatable to me. And I'm impressed with the writers for doing that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you right now, this episode deals with some heavy shit. I feel like for the most part, they handle it really
They
well.
handle it well. All right, good.
That was my basic question, because I cannot trust this show. You were telling me that
Right,
this is a bad scene,
and I have
but
some
the show,
serious problems with this episode.
but
We will
the
get to them later.
But the show is
Clearly
the show
making
is
this
telling
as
you
a negative.
This is a bad scene. Okay.
The way they show him, like, whenever he's standing by her, he's standing, like, too close and stuff, that it just, it always feels a little off, like a little horror movie-esque. But a lot of it is Jolene Blaylock's acting. She is acting the shit out of this. And she's doing it in a way where she's not showing her emotions, but showing her emotions.
My concern, and this is just because not the actors of this show, but the writing and the general direction of this show. I just want to make sure that the direction of this going is not the end of this episode is, she really needs to loosen up a little bit. Yeah. No, just, okay.
That is not where this is going, I promise.
Fantastic. Great. Okay.
Jolene Blaylock's acting, it's so believable in, like, it still feels like T'Pol. She's not, but it's the way that, like, he'll step towards her and T'Pol will sort of step around, like, back, but not really let anything show.
Okay.
It definitely gives the feeling of when a guy's talking to you and it's, like, a little bit creepy and you're being, like, overly polite, but also trying to get yourself out of the situation. It is perfectly that.
Of course, Jolene Blaylock, who looks like Jolene Blaylock, was
She probably
able to
deals
act
with
this
all
because
the fucking time.
it's just another fucking day for her.
And in this case, the lack of emotion is because she's Vulcan, but it really feels like that way that you try to hide your, you try to put on that Vulcan face because you don't want him to know that you're upset, but you also want to get away. This hits that so perfectly. It was upsetting watching it because it felt so real.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing about it, I mean, I can absolutely understand everything that's going on.
So during this whole conversation, she keeps trying to get back to work and, like, do whatever she's doing with the nebula. She'll, like, start talking like, oh, look, the nebula's doing blah, blah, blah. And then he'll be like, okay, but what did you dream about? And she's like, well, look at this nebula. And then he's like, okay, tell me about your dream. And then at one point she's working and she's, like, working on one of the like pads, the Starfleet iPads. And he leans over behind her and grabs it out of her hand as she's working and insists that she tell him about her dream.
Gross.
Yeah, it is upsetting.
Ugh.
I really hate that I don't have jokes to make about this. This is really
No,
upsetting.
there's no jokes to be made.
There's no jokes.
This is why I started with A-plot.
No.
I was like, let's get that out of the way because that's fun.
Quickly,
It would be-
how,
it would
how
almost
quickly
be-
can she leave this situation?
It would
It's
almost be
like
more upsetting if you intersperse the B plot with this.
Well, no, I feel like it definitely works because after some of these scenes, it's, like, kind of nice to see this, like, this, like, fun broy relationship and, like,
men
Trip
who
is
aren't
making a
terrible.
friend.
And maybe that's part of it is like, look, hashtag not all men.
How fucking crazy is it that this plot is so crazy that we have to cut to Trip to be, oh, thank God, what a relief.
Oh, thank God, it's a Trip scene. We can calm down.
We're back with Trip and another Vulcan to talk about his dying father to relieve the tension.
But when you're watching it, it's nice to have
No,
it.
It
I
feels
agree.
better, right?
All right,
that makes sense.
Let's continue. Jamie, thank you.
So-
Let's continue.
it gets to the point where he's basically cornered her. Like, she's not going to get out of this without telling him about her dream. So she finally gives in, and she says that it involved a memory of a time when she was on Earth working at the consulate, and she broke protocol and left the compound at night just because she was curious. And then she heard some like unusual and chaotic music, which was jazz music. It was coming from a jazz club. He then asks her how she felt when she was listening to that music. And she says, quote, "I felt invigorated." And he smiles like a gotcha, like she felt an emotion. And then she suddenly like realizes what happens, and she kind of panics, and she's like, "It was only very brief though, and then I went back to the compound and it was fine." And it was clear like there was like this brief moment where like she really felt like a strong emotion from this music.
Right.
But it was like so brief, and then it also seems like it probably scared her, and then she like got kind of scared about it, and she left and she went back to the compound and has been a good Vulcan ever since.
I just kind of wish that she had hated jazz and the emotion she'd felt was hate.
This is bullshit.
What the fuck is happening? This is terrible.
You're just going blip, 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 blip. No, it goes, you're not following a structure.
I do kind of love, though, that the thing that made her feel such overwhelming emotion that it like overwhelmed all her like repressing was music, like a piece of art. I really love that. Like that feels really moving to me.
That's very beautiful. It's also very Star Trek.
He tells her that he can show her how to feel that way again, which remember is invigorated.
Yeah.
So again, just like everything he says just like sounds creepy, and it all like sounds a little bit like innuendo, but it never like quite tips over into it. But it always just feels a little.
Just want to say, Jamie, you don't need to remind us. Everything you're telling us that this guy says.
You know, yeah. Do you think that they created this so that people would stop calling Phlox creepy? Because I think it's working.
They're like, you want to see creepy? We know creepy.
We know from creepy.
Some creepy.
Jamie is the end of this episode. Phlox going, computer, end program.
One of the things about this, too, is even though he's being creepy and she's clearly uncomfortable, you can tell that there's a part of T'Pol that is also a little bit attracted to this. I mean, she does have a sex dream about him. Like, he didn't make her have a sex dream. And clearly, like, there was that time that she, like, felt this overwhelming emotion, and it did feel good. And there's a part of her that does kind of want to feel that again. But she's clearly, like, scared. It's not really, like, this guy, but it's more like he's bringing up all these things, and she's kind of like, maybe he's right. Like, you can tell that she's like thinking about it, but she's also like scared and worried, and she's too smart to really like give in.
Right.
You can tell that she's very curious about this. She had that emotion that like that the music gave her, and she does kind of want to feel it again. And also, like, Archer was telling her that it seemed fine, you know, like everyone is telling her that this is fine to do, and that she's just crazy for being so scared of it. And so I guess she decides to experiment a little bit, because later we see her in her room with Talaris.
Is this supposed to be like somebody who was raised up in a really restrictive religious situation?
Or again, like the drugs, right? Everybody is saying like peer pressure is a powerful thing.
All right.
She's wearing her casual clothes, which I think we've seen before. It's like the purple shirt.
I've never seen her wearing anything that is not.
No, I think that in the scene when
it's kind of blousy, like kind of
Trip.
Okay.
In her room that one time when he interrupted her meditation.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I think she was wearing the same outfit. It looks very 90s is what it looks like.
Fair enough.
And Talaris is explaining what a mind meld is to her. She has never heard of a mind meld.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I also was like, that is weird. I don't know a ton about Vulcans, but I've definitely seen a mind meld, and it didn't seem like it was like something weird and new. It seemed like it was something that
I mean, but back then, I guess maybe it was interesting. I mean, that's a choice. Like, that's something they would have had to put into canon because it's important, right?
So was it 120 years between now and beginning of original series?
Kind of, sort of.
Something like
something
that.
like that.
So
That
clearly,
sounds
like
right.
something over that time, Vulcans sort of like changed their culture a little bit.
We've had the first transporter, we've had the first phaser, we've had a lot of first things, so I guess maybe.
So it's just the same thing,
Yeah.
first mind meld.
But she's never heard of a mind meld, so he explains it, that like it's gonna meld their minds. It's in the name right there, guys. She agrees to do a mind meld with him.
Oh no. Honey, no.
And he's like, it's fine. It's totally safe. I'm going to do this
God.
thing. You're going to be
I'm
fine.
gonna pull out right at the right time. It'll be fine.
No,
you won't
this
get
sounds
pregnant.
like this sounds like a drugs, or B, I think there's actually a cocktail called the Vulcan Mind Meld. We're gonna do this. It's gonna be completely safe. It's cocaine that's laced with fentanyl, but it's gonna be completely safe because I know. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, and he assures her that like he's done this a million times. Like they've been experimenting. It's totally
God.
safe. Like they figured out the methods to do all this kind of stuff safely. So she's like, okay, I guess. Like, all right, let's try it.
I hate
So-
that.
How do we make the title of this episode? Ah!
So he
Sorry.
puts his hands on her face to like the mind meld spots or whatever. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? With,
I know
like,
what
the
you're talking
finger
about.
things.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
She closes her eyes and he tells her to think about the night that she left the compound. And then we flash back to that scene of the blurry dream sequence of T'Pol walking down the street in a tight leather jacket with the jazz music. As we see this, she's like narrating it to him. She's like, I'm walking down a street. She doesn't say she's in a tight leather jacket. But then she's like, I heard some music.
I look good.
And we see her again walk into Club Fusion. And we see her sit at the table in the club, but this time Talaris is sitting at the table with her. As this is happening, Talaris is like narrating to T'Pol all the emotions that she's feeling. So he's telling her like, you knew what you were doing was wrong, but you were so curious. And like, you were like, he's like
Jesus
telling her all the emotions
How
that
she
she
feels?
would have been feeling. But he's doing this while like breathing hard in a way that is uncomfortably sexual.
Okay, I have a nerdy question, and
Okay.
I apologize for this. When they do the mind meld, does he do the little mantra, the like my mind to your mind, my thoughts to your thoughts?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're sitting in this club and he's doing this, and T'Pol is clearly getting more and more uncomfortable, and then she starts to panic. Like we see her, she just is like, this isn't right. Like, and she stands up and she's like, I have to go back to the compound. I have to go. And as she gets up to leave, he grabs her arm and prevents her from leaving. And she is like, I have to go. And he's like, no. And he's like, just stay. You're fine. You're perfectly fine. You're not in danger. And she's like, no. And she's trying to get away from him and he won't let her arm go. It's really honestly really scary.
That
And
sounds
then
awful.
we go back to see what's happening in the room. And in the room, he still has his hands on her face for the mind meld. And she is like shaking. And her eye, like she doesn't cry, but her eyes start to like look watery. Clearly does not have control. Like she is not able to get out of this herself.
Right.
Like he has like control over her and is like forcing her to like stay in this memory. And she's terrified and she just like whispers, stop. Almost a cry, like she can barely get the word out. And he just goes, no. And we see his face and he like looks all angry. And then she starts shaking more and more. And finally she is able to resist him and get out of like his spell and physically pushes him off her. And then tells him to leave. And he is still like, no,
honey.
you're okay. You were never in danger. Everything is perfectly fine. And if you just embrace your emotions and let this happen, he's like, the problem is that you're resisting. If you weren't resisting so much, it would be fine. So just like, let's just like, he wants to like do the mind meld again with her. And she is like, absolutely no fucking way. Get out.
I'm out.
And so finally he leaves. And as he's leaving, he stops, turns around, looks at her and he goes, what a shame, with just like disdain on his face. And then he leaves. And the moment he leaves, T'Pol falls to the floor And then she crawls over to the console and calls sickbay.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Luckily, we are almost at the end of this episode, you guys.
Yeah, this is going to be, now that I know this, it's going to be even harder for me to watch this episode.
Odd that nobody we've had as a guest on this podcast wanted to talk about this episode.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's very clear that it is a rape scene. Obviously, it's not a sexual rape scene, but it is like an emotional or like a mind rape scene.
Mind rape.
And it's clear that the writers know this and they don't try to cover it up. They play it like a rape scene.
I'm sorry. I had to look at the writing credits on this to see if there were any women involved.
That was my first question.
With the primary story is by our usual Berman and Braga, but there was Phyllis Strong, who was an executive story editor.
Okay.
That's the only female sounding name on here. Who was a teleplay by and story editor. So there was at least a woman.
You can tell
involved.
You can tell that there was a woman working on this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. It definitely.
Whereas I feel like most of the episodes, you're like, you can tell that there was no woman in this writer's room.
You can tell that there was no women in
and
this.
one, you're like,
Name
there was
one
a woman
episode where it was clear there was no woman working on this episode.
The pregnancy one, civilization. Let me name you all of them. Let me go through our list of episodes. Every episode prior to this one.
So we cut to Archer's quarters. Tolaris enters, and Archer starts with just like some small talk. He's like, "Hey, thank you so much for helping with the like nebula survey. It's like almost done. It went so much faster. Thank you so much for all your help." After all this, it's like all friendly, and then Tolaris gets up to leave, and right before he leaves, Archer's like, "Oh, but so you know, you're going to have to finish the survey yourself because T'Pol's in sickbay." Tolaris is like, "Oh, well, what happened? What happened?" And Archer's like, "You know damn well what happened."
Ooh.
And he tells him that he knows that he assaulted T'Pol. And he uses that word.
Right.
He uses the word assault.
Good for him.
Yeah. And Tolaris is like, no, you don't understand. T'Pol was never in danger. She was just confused because it was so new and she like panicked, but she was never in any danger. And Archer is like, fuck you. She was 100% in danger. Like, Flock said she could have had neurological damage from it. Don't
And
give me that
also,
she was
trauma
in
is
danger.
real, asshole.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And
Never in danger.
Tolaris starts to get a little angry, and he's like, well, you know, like, she consented to it. Like, I didn't do anything that she did not consent to do. He uses the word consent.
Oh my god.
And again, like, yeah, she did consent in the beginning, and then
In
she
the
was like, I'm
beginning, but
done. And he was like, fuck no, I'm not letting you leave.
Consent has to continue through the entire experience. Hello.
Yep. Archer tells him that he manipulated her into that situation, which I really kind of didn't like because, yeah, he was definitely manipulating, but also like T'Pol is smart and she had all her faculties. Like, he didn't brainwash her. I was a little bit annoyed by that because Archer makes it seem like he somehow like tricked T'Pol into it or something.
Right.
Tolaris then says that he's going to go to sickbay right away to continue guiding her in her emotional awakening. And Archer's like, fuck no. You are not going anywhere near you. We will not let you near her. And Tolaris is like, it should be her choice, not yours. And Archer's like, nope, absolutely not. He stands between Tolaris and the door and taunts him. So Archer goes, what's wrong? Are you getting angry?
Oh, shit.
And Tolaris gets so mad and he grabs Archer and throws him across the room. And then
they're way stronger than us.
They are.
Archer getting beat up again. He's like always he gets beat up more than Worf did in Next Generation.
I think it's his kink. I think he likes it.
Archer then grabs the phase pistol and points it at Talaris, which then ends the confrontation.
If you can imagine.
So, final scene, we're in T'Pol's quarters. We see her meditating, and then Archer comes in, fully just interrupting her. What we know is a very important meditation for her. Archer tells her that he finally understands why she needs to keep so much control over her emotions. He doesn't say, "You were right," but
I was wrong and you were right.
it's implied. It's implied there. Right before he leaves, T'Pol stops him and asks him if he finds dreaming enjoyable. And he says most of the time he does. And she says she envies him. And they say goodnight. End of episode.
Aww.
And the lesson is, jazz is evil.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out.
Now, I have to say, when I first watched this episode the first time, I kind of liked the scene with Archer. I was like, if we're going to get aggressive Archer, this is a time when Archer
At least
should be
he's
aggressive.
being aggressive about something. But I really don't like the White Knight bullshit that's happening here.
And here's the thing, the more I thought about it, within an hour after I'd watched the episode, I started to get angry. And the person I was angry at was not Talaris, it was Archer. He put her in that position. The entire episode, T'Pol is like, I don't trust. T'Pol warned him a bunch of times that what they're doing, they may seem fine, but it's actually quite dangerous and they should be very, very careful.
Right.
And Archer's like, what are you talking about? They ate the chicken marsala. It's fine. They're fine. You should be more like them, T'Pol.
Yeah.
Why don't you spend more time with them? Maybe learn a little bit, be open-minded.
I know the answer to this question, but is there a scene where Archer and T'Pol actually talk about this? Actually, he sees her or they're face to face after she goes to sickbay?
Only at that last scene in their quarters.
At the very end.
Because, the very last scene.
I thought about this in the last episode too. He never admits to her that he's wrong. He just.
No, and he definitely does he kind of implies it. He's like, oh, I understand you more now. But,
okay, fair. But that's
he
not
he doesn't say,
I'm sorry for putting
you were
in that
right.
situation.
Now that I think about it, when he's with Talaris, I think he does have a line where he says something like, T'Pol was right about you or something.
Right.
You
but he
are
never
dangerous.
says it to her.
But we never see him say it to T'Pol.
I mean, it's progress that he has figured that out, at least, that he is aware of that, because otherwise it just turns into I did nothing wrong, I defended my crew member, I'm awesome, right? And we're back at the end to him not understanding the fundamental issue of what he did.
And the more I thought about
wrong.
it, there are so many parallels to the way Archer treated T'Pol in this episode and the way Talaris treated T'Pol. Archer, kept just going over all of her protestations and boundaries because he felt like he knew better than her, pushing her to do things that she didn't want to do, and just totally ignoring her. And I want to say really her I know they're Vulcan feelings, but she still has feelings, right? And he was just and her expertise, she is Vulcan, she knows about this stuff, and just treating her like she doesn't know anything, he knows better, bulldozing over her boundaries. Every single thing that happened to her was completely preventable, and this entire episode is trying to get out of it, and the whole time Archer's pushing her into it,
her back
and
in,
telling her that her not wanting to do this is just closed-mindedness.
Right.
I have an idea. I like original series a lot. And original series, which came out at the end of the 60s. The Vulcans were a concept. And as a concept for a logical society, that they made a lot of jokes about, there's specifically, jokes about Vulcan women are logical, Mr. Spock. That's the only species that can make that claim, stuff like that. This feels like...
Sure.
Yeah. This Enterprise feels like the guiding concept is, hey, I'm just asking questions here.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So I got curious as you were talking because this felt like the timing of this I was curious about. So I Googled the phrase no means no. And sure enough, the first reference that I found to it was 1999, 2000, 2001. And I don't know, Jamie, I don't know if you would remember this time, but the sort of no means no when that
I was in high
became
school,
a thing.
so
Okay, so it was absolutely like you would absolutely understand that. I was,
Yeah, I mean,
I
this was
was
post Anita
out
Hill.
of college at that point, but it was right. And it was like a big thing. Like it was very much in the public sphere.
Yeah, like right after I basically was starting college when this came out. When that was on campus, like you just like date rape, right? No means no.
And this episode came out in 2002. So it's clearly, like to me, it's very clearly a response to No Means No. And, handled I would not have trusted Enterprise to handle this. I don't know that it handled it well, but it handled it better than I would have expected it to, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, from what we've seen of Enterprise, I would have expected them to like take the stance that like, what are you talking about? She was on a date with him. Like it was fine.
Yeah, take the blurred line stance.
She was listening to jazz music.
Like the definition of date rape, right? This was when everybody was talking about date rape because prior it was like, it's not really rape or whatever. And they were like, no, even if you're on a date, you can be raped. That's what this felt like. The whole consent thing where they're like, yeah, she like consented to this quote unquote date with him and she consented to the mind meld. And then she changed her mind and wanted to get out of it and he wouldn't let her.
And he wouldn't let her. Right.
Yeah, it feels like a very, very clear reference to that.
Oof.
I do have to say, the one thing though is that this Vulcan that Trip becomes friends with does seem to like have a handle on his emotion. He like feels some emotions but has a handle. So
that's interesting.
I do think it kind of feels like maybe there actually is a way to do it. And to be honest, to me, what I saw from Tolaris getting angry doesn't seem that different from like a human male who can't control his emotions well. It didn't seem like it was like so bad.
Over the top.
To me, when I saw this, I was like, maybe Vulcans can actually get to a point where their emotions are at least similar to humans.
Right.
Yeah, let's move on, guys. The Porthos good boy scale. No Porthos. Even when we were in Archer's quarters, we did not see any
Guys.
Porthos.
It's been so long since we've seen Porthos. I'm worried. I may quit this fucking podcast if we don't get more Porthos. Like, this is ridiculous.
The saucy scale. I'm sorry, what was the one from earlier? The like
between
I don't even fucking. Oh, the ghost that fucks Beverly Crusher versus I think the guy that
the rapist versus
the
ghost
rapist versus
rapist versus ghost that fucks Beverly. The candle ghost.
No, it was like the guy that because that was a Bronte-esque like. The pseudo rapist versus the ghost who decides he wants to get busy with Beverly.
We are
Crusher.
well, as you can probably tell, we are at pseudo rape. We are at rapist. We are just like at the rapist side of the scale, which is like the negative. We are at -10 on this.
In my defense,
Gross.
the ghost episode
You did not know.
In my defense, the ghost episode was presented as erotic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's why that's the 10. That's the
Okay,
sex scale.
That's the 10.
Just want to say,
Guys, this is an aside, but my first time watching Next Generation, I was like halfway through season 1 and I was reading like a episode review on AV Club and I was reading comments. And so there was a comment where some guy was like, he makes some comments about that time that Crusher fucks a candle ghost.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? That can't be real.
No.
So then we had a Zoom call. This was during the pandemic. And I asked you guys, I was like, this isn't real, right? Crusher never fucks a candle ghost. And Maria, you and Bill were like, no, Jamie, Crusher's gonna fuck a candle ghost. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's a ghost and a candle and she fucks it. And I'm like, no, guys, no way. So then I knew, this was like the only thing about Next Generation that I knew was that one day Crusher was gonna fuck a candle ghost. And so as I'm watching Next Generation, every time that there was Crusher near a candle, I was like, is she gonna fuck that candle? And guys, there are so many scenes with Crusher near a candle. You don't realize it till you're looking for it. But every time she's in her room, she like has lit candles. And I'm like, oh my God, she's about to fuck that candle. Every time. And the ghost episode is one of the last episodes of all of Next Generation.
Yeah, completely.
It's like way at the end.
Yeah.
So for a year watching Next Generation, I was like, when is she gonna fuck a goddamn ghost candle?
So people complain about this episode, especially in terms of sexuality in Star Trek, and they're like, "Oh, this is so problematic and stuff." Beverly comes like a freight train in that episode.
Oh my god! All right, guys.
Okay.
But for the saucy section, I did pull out a different scene, not from anything but from our B plot. There's a scene where Trip and Kav are eating in the mess hall. They're both eating rotini with vegetables, in case you're curious.
Thank you.
And up until now, Kav has been asking Trip all the questions about humans.
Mm-hmm.
But now Trip is like, I actually have a question about Vulcans. And Kav is like, ask me anything. Like, great. I'm so, Kav, you guys, I love Kav. Kav is so great. I have a feeling we're never going to see him again because Tolaris was so awful. But I hope they kind of find a way to somehow bring Kav back because I kind of liked him.
That'd be cute.
Trip clearly is trying to ask Kav about Vulcan sex, but he doesn't want to like say it. Kav is like, oh, you want to know about Vulcan sex, like super loud. And this mess hall's so crowded and everyone kind of like looks over like
Phlox is at a separate table. He picks up the tray and walks over to the table that there's sitting
no,
at.
but somebody else does come in, not Phlox. Malcolm walks over and is like, hey, can I join you guys? So what you talking about?
Malcolm,
And Colm
you
is like-
creep.
Oh, Trip was just asking me about Vulcan mating practices. And Malcolm like looks at Trip and is like, okay. And he's like, and then he sits down. He's clearly like, all right, let's get into this.
All right, let's talk this. Let's talk about this. It's a
but,
throwback to Shuttlepod 1.
Kav does say that Vulcan males mate once every 7 years, but that they are trying to develop methods to accelerate the mating cycle. By they, I assumed he meant the people on his ship, but he doesn't clarify.
Right.
Oh, I assumed they meant... Oh, okay.
Like, I don't think it's just Vulcans. I think that it's Kav and his buddies want to fuck more.
Oh, all right.
But especially with the stuff where he's like seems very curious about like when he asks Trip if he can like mate year round.
anybody,
like,
anytime,
like yeah,
yeah.
it makes it sound like it's like him and his buddies are trying to find ways so that they can have sex more often.
It's literally a bunch of incels. You're right. Vulcan incel ship.
Yeah. What the Phlox, which is usually for the creepiest thing Phlox said, but unfortunately, Phlox did not say one creepy thing this episode.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Was he in this episode?
He wasn't, because he was helping T'Pol in Midbay.
Right.
But
Right.
Phlox was like, you need to stay away from these guys. I don't know what to tell you.
no, actually, he has like this really nice conversation with her as he's like giving her this medication. Because he's like, oh, you're like decided to experiment with this, and like we know from what we know about Phlox, he's very curious about other cultures, and he's kind of into experimenting with stuff from other cultures. So
I like
he kind of
Phlox
like
a
he
lot.
understands where she's coming from and why she might be interested. He tells her it's like really great. He's like kind of open and encouraging with her about experimenting, but he also tells her to be really careful. He says that these other Vulcans have spent years with their experimenting before they have been able to get to the point they're at now, and that she's just starting out. So he tells her to be very careful and go very slowly, which is like very good advice from Phlox.
Yeah, if there are absolutely no female Vulcans on this ship, that's kind of upsetting.
So last segment, yes, chef. We got a whole bunch of mentions of chef. During the dinner with the Vulcans, Archer says that chef has gotten pretty good at preparing Vulcan dishes. And he also made that chicken marsala for Archer. At the end of the episode, Tavin requests the recipe for the chicken marsala from Archer. And Archer jokes that chef's recipes are usually classified, but he'll make an exception in this case.
That's kind of weird in a diplomatic sense if he knew he was going to have a dinner with Vulcans and he decided to have meat, and like he decided to have a protein that they wouldn't like. It was
bizarre. Speaking as somebody who grew up in a diplomatic family, that is unheard of.
Right.
It's just unheard of to have different, for the captain to eat something different from everybody else.
My father tells a story about like having to eat ox eyeballs because that was what was put in front of him. That's what he had to eat.
That was when he was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, right? Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
So this is the segment that we like to call Will's Holorex. Yep. We all know what William Riker is up to in the holodeck. That's right. He is binging the Enterprise. But we are going to give our recommendations for what he should be doing instead. Bill, why don't you start?
I have recently gotten obsessed with a British television series called Would I Lie to You? If you are a fan of Two Truths and a Lie, you're going to love this show. It is a British panel show where two teams of three people, they read statements, some of which are truths and some of which are lies, and they have to convince the other teams that what they're saying is the truth. It's absolutely amazing. I thought I would be great at this series. I'm absolutely garbage at this series.
Oh, yeah.
And what amazes me, David Mitchell is one of the permanent captains on the show, and I love him. He and Lee Mack are absolute experts at pretending that they're lying and presenting that, like, oh, no, wait, I just made this up. I'm completely screwed, but it's actually the truth. It's a fantastic series. So Would I Lie to You, which is available on BBC.
Yeah, I second that. Great.
Maria, what is your recommendation today?
My recommendation is for a series of books that I just recently started re-listening to. They're fairly old, but they're an amazing series by an author named Lois McMaster Bujold. The series she's written a couple of series I am completely in love with is called the Vorkosigan series. Yes. It is sort of big space opera type stuff, but it's very personal and very like heartwarming. Before I had ever read it, somebody described it to me as Tyrion Lannister if he had a family who loved him. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of like that. Yep. But yeah, Lois McMaster Bujold, the Vorkosigan series.
All right. And my recommendation today, I actually almost did this last week, but then I had convinced myself that Bill had already done this as a recommendation because this was a recommendation that I got from Bill outside of this podcast. But I want to recommend Dungeon Meshi, also known as Delicious in Dungeon.
Great show.
It is an anime. It's on Netflix of a group of adventurers adventuring in a dungeon, killing monsters. Very like D&D, like very D&D, except that after they kill the monsters, they cook them up and make a lovely meal and eat it together. Literally every time they see a monster, they're like, "Ooh, look at that monster. You think we could eat it?"
It's imagine a food porn show. Imagine Iron Chef if the meat or what the central ingredient did not exist. And they're describing how to eat this. But also there are...
Yeah, like the central ingredients are these magical monsters.
Oh my God, that's so great. It's awesome.
It's such a great... There's so many layers in this show. It's so good.
And that is the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Next episode of our show, Maria will be watching the episode Rogue Planet. Before we head out, I just have a quick little public service announcement for those of you who are American citizens. This is the last episode before the election, and so we at Enterprise Planning want to remind you this is a very, very important election. Please, please, please vote.
Please vote.
And don't forget to vote down ballot, too. The only way we're going to get better candidates in the future for president is if you are voting for those progressive candidates now in your local races. So there's only around a minute left in this podcast. So the second it ends, take a couple minutes and put your voting plan together. And not just like a theoretical, like, oh, yeah, no, I'm definitely going to vote. What day are you going to vote? Are you voting early if your state allows it? Are you voting on election day? What time are you going? How are you getting there? Check the times that it's open and what times you're going to be working that day. Make sure it's going to work for you. Make sure you double check where your polling location is. Maybe it changed from last time. Like, I'm very serious. Sit down and actually make a plan and
put it on your calendar.
Please go vote.
That's right.
And with that, back to the usual script. Special thanks to K.O. Myers at Particulate Media for sound assistance, to our friend David for our beautiful cover art, and to John Stephen King for being the voice of our computer. If you liked this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast app of choice and tell your friends about it. We really appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram at EnterpriseSplaining and on Blue Sky at EnterpriseSplain. You can also email us any comments, questions, such as, do you like the taste? To enterprisesplaining@gmail.com.
Do not email us that.
We would love to hear from you, but maybe not that. If you want to support this podcast, you can find us on Buy Me a Coffee as Enterprise Splaining. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Computer. End program.
I have a recurring nightmare. Do you know how, like, archaeologists and stuff is like, well, this was a major work in Roman history, but we only have fragments referred to from every other author. Can you imagine if this is the last piece of human history that survives, and an alien archaeologist has to try and extrapolate what our world was like based on this? What a fucking nightmare.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.